Welcome to the Rich Praytor podcast. In this episode, I interview Jason Collette. He's a longtime friend and one of the supporting actors in The Devil in All of Us, a Netflix original that is getting Oscar buzz.
It's a roller coaster, I guess is the way to put it.
Oh, really? How come? We're just going to jump right into it. How come?
I like to think of it as it's just one gut punch after another. Like there's hardly any positivity to be thrown from this film. All the characters have their own demons, everyone's struggling, and the innocence of the film. The people who are good on the inside and try to do the right thing. They all have terrible, terrible deaths. So
yes, it wasn't your feel-good movie, but. But it was really compelling.
Definitely not one you'd want to sit down with the whole family.
Right, exactly. And that's so funny. I was watching it. It took me like two days to watch just because I didn't want my kid around me, so I would just kind of sneak watch it on my computer while I was working. But the reviews were great. It was okay. So for someone who you've been in I've known you for it's been 6-7 years now. We met on Inheritance a few years ago. And what got you into acting?
I wasn't really much of an actor. It wasn't until high school, and I just took an acting class as a blow-off class. I just needed an easy grade, and I had a buddy who was in the class, and he was like, "Oh, just join the class." He was like, "We don't even do any kind of tests. There's no paperwork, no essays." He was like, "You just join the class and we just goof off all day." So that's what got me into the class. And then from there, it was the work that we were doing was very much performance-based. We'd write our own sketches or write our own shorts, and we would do some improv. And we would basically just perform for the class. And that is actually where I fell in love with it. I felt like it was definitely something that spoke to me in terms of I love creating, but also I love the reactions that I'm seeing, making people feel something, whether it was laughing or crying or, joy. It was fun to kind of be able to, I don't want to say manipulate people, but in a way you kind of are, through your acting. And I thought that there was a lot of power, a lot of freedom in that. I enjoyed it, so I kept it going all throughout college. All throughout high school and into college, I did some community theater, but it was really filmed in TV. My eyes were sad. It wasn't until college when I sat down with a guidance counselor, and she basically told me, she was like, "Babe, you want to be an actor, but you don't want to do theater. You have to be in Los Angeles if this is something you want to take seriously." So that was the day I realized that I needed to pack up and leave. So I packed up my belongings and I drove out to Los Angeles, and that was in the summer of 2007. Yeah, 2007. So that was kind of when it officially started.
That was a wise counselor. You don't hear that.
I know. I owe a lot to her. It's funny she was so fed up with me. Because I was in and out of her office once a week or once every 2 weeks, because she was trying to get me to figure out what my major was going to be. And she kept trying to get me to do theater, and I said, "No, I don't want to do theater." So, I did business, philosophy, psychology. I was kind of all over the place. But really it was her advice to just say, "You know what? I think you just need to move to LA." That's what finally gave me that nudge.
You probably did just leave. Can you just leave me alone?
Yeah, she was just sick of me.
That's funny. And then, what was your experience like? Because I had a similar experience. After college, I worked a year at a television station doing video production, and then packed up my stuff and went to LA to pursue stand-up and acting. What was your experience like? Did you, well, first off, where are you from originally?
Atlanta.
Oh, Atlanta, okay. Which is like the new Hollywood, apparently.
Yeah, it's definitely changed a lot since 2007. Back then, there was nothing going on in Atlanta. It was there were some agencies, but it was still all the casting was being done on the West Coast or in New York. So that's changed since the success of Walking Dead brought a lot of production over here over the last couple of years. So Atlanta's really kind of become its own little mini Hollywood in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I heard the tax incentives are really good for production companies as well. I had a roommate in LA that, man, he just, he tried still to get an agent. He went around LA, I don't know how many, for a couple of years, just couldn't get anything. Moved back to Atlanta, and then now he's been he's like a working actor now, which is great. So he gets a lot of these bit parts and he's been in some big movies and is doing really well. So yeah, Atlanta's up there right now.
Yeah, I always like to tell actors, they're looking to just kind of build a resume. It's like, Atlanta is a place you should definitely consider. There are some pros and cons, LA just has decades and decades of history and, with acting techniques and studios. So obviously the best teaching that you can get is that's going to be the source. But Atlanta does have great teachers, great workshops, great studios. There's a lot to get from Atlanta, and then not to mention the opportunities. So it just depends on where you're at in your career and what you want to be focusing on will determine which city is best for you.
Exactly. So I'm in LA. Were you just kind of do the typical, get a part-time job and then try to get an agent and just start working on as much as you could?
Yeah, I started hustling, the way that everyone else does. I got a job at a theme park where as a superhero. I was Robin in the Justice League. So that was kind of my side hustle, putting off Band-Aids every day and taking pictures with kids and stuff like that. I also started doing background just because I wanted to, become familiar with how the set operates. I wanted to see the professionals in their element, those big-time celebrity actors, and how they do things, what they're doing on set and how I can kind of replicate that. So background was essential in terms of kind of getting some training, on-set training. But yeah, I joined an acting studio and I kind of bounced around a bunch of different places to figure out which acting method or which style or which teacher really, I felt gravitated towards.
And then how did you get in contact with Rick and that's where we ended up working together?
Rick, I started working, I was doing a lot of short films, a lot of student films, and through those I started to become friends with some up-and-coming filmmakers at the time. One of which, his name was Brandon Rice and Daniel Noah, and Ian Carson. I believe Ian Carson was the one. He was a director. He was mainly doing shorts. He eventually moved into full-length features. But he was friends with Rick, and I'm not really sure how they knew each other. But he got word that Rick was casting for this film, and he needed an actor to play this specific part. And I think Ian was the one that referred me to him, so that's how I kind of got in touch with Rick.
Yeah, that was my first, that was my second or third full feature film that I was like an actor in, and so it was a great learning experience.
Oh, absolutely. Same here. I think that was my second. So.
Yeah, and the level of quality of acting in that movie was I thought it was kind of experienced, in stand-up, and then but when I walked on set, you really had to bring it. I mean, it was a very emotional film and tackled some tough topics, and but yeah, it was. I had to stretch myself. I had to keep up with you guys because you guys were killing.
Getting to work with legendary actors such as Robert Milano, the amount of professionalism that was just on the set, whether it was from Rick himself because he was working with some excellent DPs, and then other people in the cast like Andrew Chaney. The movie definitely, it shows in the final product.
Yeah, and I love the fight scene. My kids, The it was funny. My kid, because it's on, it's on a couple of streaming services now. I guess I came across the trailer or whatever, and they just happened to see my face, and they had no idea that I was in it. Because they were chewing through whenever I was out there. But it was so funny. They were asking me how it's felt to get punched by Andrew, and I was like walking through the process of how it's fake, But it was funny. So what got you to move back to Atlanta? Because I saw on Facebook that you drove back to, you went back home and was going to start you over there.
Yeah, it was 2016 is where I started noticing, that Atlanta was kind of becoming a hot spot in terms of, film and TV. And I remember struggling with it for quite some time because I loved LA and I was there for like 10 years. It's always uncertain, you don't want to leave a place like Los Angeles to go to what could end up being a smaller market or a less profitable market. But there was just something about Atlanta that kind of was speaking to me. I saw that, with the tax incentives, it seemed like it was going to eventually take off. So I made the decision to say, I'm going to try it. I'm going to see what happens. At the time, I wasn't really having a whole lot of success in LA, so I was in a position to kind of make a lifestyle change. And it ended up being a great decision. I moved back home to Atlanta in 2016. And almost immediately, auditions just started pouring in. And, I've been getting 4 or 5 times as many auditions here in Atlanta that I ever got in LA. So, bigger sized roles, too. So it ended up paying off. And it ended up being a good decision. So, and that's what's kept me here for the last couple of years. Is, it's a little bit cheaper to live in Atlanta. I've actually been able to buy land out here, and I'm currently building a house. So, I've managed to kind of dig my feet in a little bit here. But, if I ever got the phone call to go back to LA, I wouldn't even hesitate, not for a second.
Nice. Okay, so let's talk about this Oscar buzz movie that just got released, about a month ago, something like that.
Yeah, it was about a month ago. Devil All the Time.
Yeah, Devil All the Time. What was the process of you getting cast in the film?
Well, it was late 2018. It was around December 2018. I got a call from my agent, and he was just like, if something new, a portion of a script, I want you to read it and tell me what you think. I want to pitch you for this role. So he sends me the scene, and it's essentially, are we talking spoilers in this, or do you want to keep things, spoiler free?
Oh, use your best judgment. I've already seen the movie, so.
Well, okay. Well, it's a pretty dramatic, violent scene that takes place in the film. And what you see in the film, by the way, is not at all what's in the script. The original shooting script was maybe about 3 times longer than what was ultimately edited down for the film. But this scene is just on the edge of your seat the whole time. I couldn't even take my eyes off of it. Every page, I'm just analyzing every word because I'm so hooked into what's happening. I immediately read that script and called my agent back, and I was like, I don't know what this is from, but I want to do it. This is great. I loved everything about it, and it seemed like it was going to be a role that would be very challenging too. And this was before I even knew who the cast was, who the director was, the writer, any of it. And then, my agent pitched me to it for it. And then that's when I started getting more information. It's based on the book by Donald Ray Pollock. I immediately read the book in the span of like a week, and the book is phenomenal. If you're a fan of the movie, if you're a fan of that tone and that kind of world that's been created, I definitely recommend checking out the book. Because, of course, the book goes into a lot more detail on everything, all the characters and stuff. But, I put myself on tape. I recorded the audition at my house with some friends. I sent it off. I didn't hear anything for maybe a month. And then I get a call from my agent. This was like January of 2019 now. And he says, Antonio Campos, the director, he's coming into Atlanta and he wants to meet with you. He wants to sit down and just kind of talk about the role and the film a little bit. And I immediately was like, yes, absolutely. Just tell me where to be and when, and I'll be there. So, I met with Antonio, and I found out that Antonio is a huge fan of the book, and I've already read it at this point. So, for the first half of the meeting, all we did was just kind of, geek out over the book and our favorite parts and, his vision for what the film version is going to look like. And, we talked about the role. The casting director, Tracy Kilpatrick, was there as well. We even read through the scene a couple times. It was just like a really good conversation. And it went so well that as soon as I walked out of that room, I immediately called my agent and I was just like, "Oh, you're going to get a phone call because, I'm going to get the role."
Right.
My agent laughed. He was like, "Okay, don't get too into yourself." But sure enough, like 2 hours later, he calls me back and he's like, "You got it." He's like, "It's yours." So that basically started the process of trying negotiating with Netflix and, figure out the dates and when that needs to be available, and then sending me the full script and me reading it, and also, finding out more information about the cast. Because, the cast went through a lot of changes during production as well. I believe Chris Evans was attached at one point. We ended up replacing him with Sebastian Stan. I think Jason and Riley came on late in the game too. So I wasn't even really sure who was going to be playing Carl or Sandy until, maybe a week or two before filming. We filmed in March, and just spent a week out in Alabama. We were filming in parts of Alabama in the woods and stuff like that, and on different back roads. And, it was great. I had a wonderful time working with the cast. I got to bump into a few of them, at our holding camp and stuff like that. Jason and Riley were just wonderful to work with. I have nothing but good things to say about both of them. And, it was a wonderful experience. So.
Nice. What is your, how did you approach this character as far as knowing, and I'm sure the book played a huge role in it, but, as far as playing the character that you played, how did you approach it? I mean, did you have a ritual that you go through? Do you try to dive into the character and the background and, and then you gotta marry that with the actual dialogue of the movie and trying to make it all, blend together. What's your whole process for that?
Well, I try to go with my gut instinct on a lot of my choices. In the original script, or not the original script, in the original novelization, by Donald Reed Pollock, Kerry Matthew Bryson he's mentioned, but he's not really, there's not a whole lot of detail on his backstory or whatnot. It's just very thick, his interaction with Carl and Sandy. So that was actually extended for the film version. Antonio and his brother, what they did was they took a character and they moved it around. So, in the book, the stuff with Gary Matthew Bryson happened a lot sooner. So some of the order of events are kind of mixed around. So when I read the book and then, getting the script, I knew right away that my interpretation of Gary was going to be very different, just based off of the needs of the story that Antonio was trying to tell. He comes at a much more crucial point in Carl and Sandy's arc. So playing him the way that he's portrayed in the book wouldn't have really worked, especially because in the book, he's kind of written as a bit of a jerk. He comes in, he sits down, and, he's just very dismissive, kind of short with Carl and Sandy. And he's just kind of forgettable jerk is probably the best way to put it. Antonio and I experimented with some of those choices. And, what if when I got in the car, if I just felt like I owned the car and I put my feet up and basically being disrespectful to Carl and stuff like that. And like I said, we talked about it, but ultimately, as soon as I read the script, I kind of had this idea that I felt like in a film with this many characters who are just all going down their own paths of depravity and, living these full lives, and that, they all have their sins that they're, committing. I thought that it would be a nice refresher to have a character who was almost like innocent in the sense that, he's almost like a sacrificial lamb. Like he's the one sinless character who shouldn't have to die, but the moment he gets in that car, everyone knows it's fake, But I wanted to think of what's the most fun way to portray this character so that knowing from the moment he sets foot in that car what his fate will be, what's the best kind of version of that character to play. And I felt that making him the nicest, most vulnerable character in the whole film was probably the way to go. He's just so sweet. You don't want anything to happen to him, but he's like I said, he's this innocent lamb in a car full of lions. So that was kind of the choice there, and how I wanted to portray Gary.
Yeah, that was the ending of that sequence was tough to watch because like
it's tough to watch. Imagine filming it.
Yeah, I know. Like, what was that? Like that was you, right? All makeup, everything was real. I mean, obviously not that.
No. In the original script, we had that scene that went on for much longer. You only saw 6 seconds of a scene that probably went on for about 4 minutes. In the original script, you see everything. You see the whole process that Gary goes through, leading all the way up to his death. In the finalized film, it happens off screen. You just see a little flashback. But in the original script, though, you see there's a little bit of some seduction going on between Sandy and Bryson. You see that kind of how that unfolds. Then you see the moment when things flip, and all of a sudden it goes from kind of like a sexual encounter to now Gary is fighting for his life. And Carl doesn't let him go peacefully. Carl, that's not Carl's MO. So he kind of drags it out for a little bit, and he has a lot of fun with Bryson in terms of the things he says to him to kind of to come off as intimidating and to put him in a state of discomfort. In the original script, he shoots Bryson in the leg, so he immobilizes Bryson right off the bat, and then Bryson, who's completely naked, tries to get away. There's some crawling through the woods, and Carl stalks him, tracking him down before ultimately torturing him and then killing him. And that's all footage that we shot on the day. So, what you see in the finished film isn't even close to what actually happens. But they didn't make those decisions until late in the editing. Because the movie was already running over 2 hours. You have to start cutting out some of the fat. And unfortunately, the extended version with Brian was cut. Maybe we'll see it someday. I don't know, but yeah.
Well, that 6 seconds was enough because it puts your mind in a place of like it gives you a glimpse and it just lets your mind take over of what's actually happened before and afterwards. So it's
exactly. I think that was the intent with the edit too. It was like we could show you, but there's so much power in the imagination that Antonio could kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. He could chop down his runtime, and also, depending on who you ask, they all might have a different interpretation of the torture that Gary went through.
Yeah. Wow, that was. I think one of the biggest things that I learned going back to any of you actors out there was memorizing the lines that I think is inheritance. There's a lot of dialogue. One of the things I think I learned from you and or Andrew was to record my lines and then just kind of listen to them over and over again on my phone. And like that's been my go-to way of memorizing lines. Is that something you do, or do you just kind of read it off the script and or give a process to that?
No, I've been incredibly fortunate to work with some acting teachers in LA that specialize on memorization. And there's a teacher, his name was Robert Giovanzo. He works out of Burbank, and to date, by far, one of the best audition technique classes I've ever taken. And his whole method was, you know the lines, you read the script, you know it, they're there, you know what happens in the story, you know where you ultimately end up, and you have a rough idea of how to get there. It's almost like you just trust yourself in knowing the lines, because I know it seems like a lot when you have to memorize, 20 pages of dialogue or whatnot, and just like, it could seem overwhelming, but, when you break it down, it's all very, linear, the thoughts connect very easily. It's like no line is just going to be completely abstract or random. They all kind of follow a pattern, a thought pattern. And so once you kind of start training yourself to recognize the thought pattern and to trust yourself, that's when you can kind of start to quickly memorize these scenes. And that was his whole thing, was he would do these exercises where he'd give us, 8 pages of a scene. And he would tell us we have an hour to memorize it. And then we're going to go on tape and we won't have the script. And, everybody in that class is freaking out, how are we going to memorize 8 pages? We only have an hour? No, that's fine. It can't be done. And, after the hour, we'd all take our turn and go up on camera and we would do the scene, and every actor would struggle. There'd be times when we were like, I don't know the lines, Robert. And he would just go, no, you know it. He's like, we're just going to sit here until you figure it out. And, we would sit there for 15, 20 minutes sometimes, and the actor would swear up and down. He's like, I just don't know it. And then eventually, every time, it just clicked. They would just go, I think it might be this. And then he would leave with that, and we would get back on track, and the scene would continue, and, we would finish. And then, the next week, we would do the same exercise. Instead of an hour, we now have a scene to memorize 8 pages that we only now have 45 minutes. So, we would do the process all over again. And by the end of the 6-week course, we were now memorizing, 10 pages in 15 minutes. And that was because we were training ourselves to trust ourselves and to kind of recognize the patterns in the text and how they connect to the thoughts. And that's kind of been the method that I've been using, ever since for years. Now I get a script, and I only have to look over, 10 minutes or so before, my brain at this point is trained to kind of recognize the pattern. So, it's become a very valuable tool in my arsenal here, because you can hand me a script, and I can have it memorized in 10 minutes, and for the most part, do it flawlessly with little small trouble. And I have Robert to thank for that.
That's great. I should have taken this class when I was taking this class when I was out there. I'll have 4 or 5 lines, and then I'm just like, it's a whole day for me. So, all right, here we go. And then, do you have any other upcoming projects that you can talk about, or?
Well, there's not a whole lot on right now with the pandemic. They're slowly starting to come back to work. So auditions are pouring in. I've had some really good ones. A couple of promising roles. I try not to think too much about them. What I'll do is I'll do the audition, I'll send off, and then I try my best to just move on. If you hear back, great. If you don't, it just wasn't. It wasn't the role for you. What's meant for you is going to come to you. You just can't worry about the things outside of your control. So right now I don't have anything coming in the pipeline. aside from a movie that I did before the pandemic. It's called Stay at Condor Beach, and it's starring Jonathan Cross and Annabeth Gish. And that should be coming out. I'm not really sure they haven't announced the release date. And I don't know at what point in production we're at right now with the whole pandemic, but we should be hearing some information come back from that.
Good, yeah. I'm hoping things will swing back into how it was before, like a year ago. Well,
yeah, it seems to be picking back up, so we'll see.
And if someone wants to get a hold of you or reach out to you or find out more about who Jason Collette is, where can I send you to?
You can send them to my Instagram, actor_JNC.
Nice. I'll put that in the description as well. But Jason, thanks so much I don't want to take too much time, but thanks so much for having the conversation. Man, it was really, really good to hear the behind the scenes and process of this movie. And everyone check it out, The Devil All the Time, Netflix. It's streaming now, and it's up. I guess it's getting some Oscar buzz, and hopefully we'll see you guys on the red carpet or red Zoom carpet, however they do it next year. But
yeah,
I think it'd be great.
It would be fun, right, to go to the Oscars. Huh?
Oh, that'd be it. So I will be rooting for you guys to be there. And but yeah, thanks so much for being on the podcast. And yeah, we'll talk to you soon.